the other thing about Vivek, like when he speaks publicly, he speaks very strongly, but I can see him in China sitting across from Xi Jinping and being very confident that he's going to say and do the right things. And he's younger. I think that the bench needs to be a little bit younger.
Oh, I completely agree with you. A gerontocracy is constantly, that word is swirling around my mind as we look at the people who are representing us. I'm saying just a decade younger, please.
60s would be good.
Yeah. Vivek would be amazing if we could get something like that done.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Michele Tafoya podcast.
Excited to have Amala Ekpunobi back on the podcast today. By the way, hit subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. Please make sure you never miss an episode. Download those. Amala, you may know her from Prager University, from filling in for Dennis Prager on his show. You may not know her from that. You may follow her on X. You may not, but you should. Amala Ekpunobi is young. She never got a college degree, which I think is in her favor. She is wise. She is enterprising. And she has gone off on her own. She is an independent podcaster doing a lot of great things. And she is so fun to talk to. Once a warrior for the left, she's done a 180 and you'll want to hear why. She is our guest. She is fascinating. We're going to talk about a ton of stuff in a short amount of time. It's good bang for your buck. So stay tuned for Amala coming up. Amala Ekpunobi, it is so good to see you again. Welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me, Michele.
You are out in California, the place I was born and raised, and you're still finding it to your liking. I don't think I could ever go back just because of the craziness of the politics and the expense and all of those things. What gives you hope that California might be a place that you can stay?
Oh, goodness. When I moved to LA for the first time, it was such a culture shock because I came from a small town and suddenly the streets were dirty and there was crime everywhere and the homelessness is a real issue. Yeah. You get desensitized to it really quick. I'll be honest about that. As far as what's kept me optimistic, I'm surrounded by good people all the time, and where LA sort of gets this rap for not having a lot of conservatives or like-minded people, every single time I go out in LA, people are stopping me and saying, you know what, they may whisper it, but they are kindred spirits and they agree with the things that we're talking about and they want to see change in the city. So that's what keeps me sticking around, I think.
Yeah, it is funny. It's sort of an underground, culture that you have to whisper, I agree with you.
100%.
But that's good to hear. I would love to see it back to its glory at some point. Speaking of back to its glory, we'd love to see this country get back to better days. And I think part of what we're seeing right now in these campus protests, Amala, is shocking, not only because of the magnitude of the anti-Semitism, and that it is still there, and it is as though October 7th never even happened, and that the Jews aren't allowed to defend themselves, that Israel isn't allowed to defend herself. But also these protests shock me in the way that they are accommodated by universities. Not all, but to say, we're going to negotiate with the protesters. It just from that, I hate this phrase, but a 30,000 foot look. When you look at this whole nationwide campus protesting, what goes through your mind? What do you attribute it to?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot to unpack here. There's many slices of the pie, and the conversation really requires a lot of nuance. And I like to split the student groups that are, heading these protests on these universities into different categories. I think there's a small sect of students who actually maybe have some reasonable demands of the universities, who are there and who may not be anti-Semitic. Then you have another group of students who has used this opportunity to just take what I believe is a simmering hatred and anger that they feel towards the country, maybe towards Israel, and they're allowing that opportunity to just throw all the anger and hatred out. What's even more concerning is the group of students that has no idea why they are on these campus protests. Yeah. And I honestly think more so than anti-Semitism or a vitriolic hate towards Israel is that young people have, as I said before, a simmering anger towards life in this country, towards America. They're looking at their prospects and they're thinking, I don't have much going on here. They're looking at their university degrees that they're paying exorbitant amounts of money for and thinking, I don't know how far this is going to take me. And we see in movement after movement that students will take the opportunity to espouse that anger, whether it's Black Lives Matter, or whether it's Trans Lives Matter, and now what's going on with the Palestinians in Gaza. So it's hard to decipher because I think somewhere in there are students that maybe do have reasonable demands of these universities, and we in this country do have a right to protest. Yeah. But it's those who enter in with hate or who skew these protests in a different direction, they muck it all up.
Well, you know, when I was attending Cal Berkeley, the protests that went on when I was there were anti-apartheid. This will age me. I don't care. You know, we had this kind of shanty city that popped up in Sproul Plaza, which is the big main plaza at Cal Berkeley. And people were living in cardboard boxes kind of to emulate what was going on in South Africa with apartheid, and let's divest from, you know, anyone doing business with South Africa, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't hateful toward anyone. It was a protest. It was, hey, people are being treated horribly in South Africa. There's this two-class system in South Africa, and let's divest. But these seem to me, because I think you mentioned something that's important. There is an overlap between anti-Israel and anti-American hate. And I think it's deep, deep rooted that because Israel is an exceptional country that does a lot creatively, financially, it's a beautiful, successful country. America has always been an enterprising place, a place where capitalism works, where it can lift people. But if you happen to disagree with those ideas, or you think everyone ought to be equal, or that communism is the better way, you sort of hate that idea. What do you think about that idea that maybe the anti-Americanism and anti-Israel are almost one and the same?
I think it's born out of a larger framework and worldview that young people have been taught, and specifically through the education system, of looking at the world through oppressor and oppressed narratives. So when you look at the world in a black and white view like that, you're just going to categorize everything into those categories. And that's why I think conversation is at a stalemate on these campuses, because if that's the framework that you have, it's really hard to negotiate and compromise on these issues. I think we're seeing now some universities are coming forward and saying, well, let's sit down and have a conversation about divestment and what that looks like, and what companies do you feel as though we are invested in that support Israel. But these students come forward and they say, no, we want all the money taken out. We want this and that. Everything, anything that ties to Israel, we want to pull the support from. And when you have that black and white framework, which again translates to their view on America, it's very difficult to have a conversation. As I said, you know, some of these students, the sentiments that they're sharing, I agree with. I just don't know that they are speaking for the majority of them there. And when these movements grow and suddenly unreasonable students are jumping in and they're hurling out anti-Semitic phrases or saying even something as crazy as they support Hamas, we lose all sight of where we're going.
What part of it do you agree with, Amala?
Yeah, I can see in a lot of ways as a student. Say you're going to an Ivy League institution and you're paying tens of thousands of dollars per semester to go to this school, and you find out that that tuition that you're paying to the school is going towards investment in a company that you don't support, or investment into the military industrial complex, and that's something that you don't support. I think there's room to have a conversation as a student with the university administrators and people who are responsible for those investments to say, you know, is there something we can do here? Is this a reasonable place we should be at as a university? unfortunately, I think that conversation has been lost in the vandalism, in the anti-Semitism, in the students who have been, holding off Jewish students from being able to go to class, the outsiders who come into the university and are suddenly shouting pro-Hamas sentiments. Oftentimes, I feel like leftist movements can start from a very reasonable point or a very reasonable question and very quickly devolve into madness.
So I love grilling food. My family loves grilled food, whether it's vegetables, seafood, steak, burgers, whatever it is, chicken. Solair Grills makes an Solair infrared gas grill that will be the last grill you ever buy. And you know what? You can try it before you buy it. How many grill companies can say that? They're veteran owned. Every one of their products is made in the USA. And how about this? What does it mean, infrared gas grill? It heats up to 1,000 degrees in 3 minutes. Your oven can't do that. No grill can do that, even in the dead of winter. And that kind of heat locks in juices and flavor, and it grills your food faster. So instead of having to think about grilling only on the weekends, you can grill every day of the week. Again, you can try it before you buy it. Go to besthotgrill.com. You'll get their free guide, how to choose the right infrared grill. I don't care if you have an apartment balcony or a full-on backyard entertainment kitchen. Besthotgrill.com will help you find what you want. With a hot, fast Solair infrared gas grill, you are going to want to grill every day because you don't want to spend all that time in the kitchen. Do away with the takeout. Do this on your own. Solair Grills. Last one you'll ever buy. Go to besthotgrill.com, besthotgrill.com. There are a lot of allegations, and some of them substantiated, some very legitimate, that the agitators have taken advantage of this situation, come in and train these students on how to protest. The other part of that equation that you bring up, where, what is the university investing in? I would ask too, who outside of the United States, which foreign countries, sometimes adversarial countries, China, Qatar, are subsidizing these schools? We know that Ivy League institutions get a lot of funding from some of these outside countries that may be endorsing that concept of oppressed versus oppressor and instituting that into the teaching in order to divide us here in America, in order to create that rift. That is a major concern. That's what I would be protesting.
Yeah, I think there are a million things going on the university campuses right now that are not okay. And as watching this from an outsider who hasn't attended university, or at least when I did, I went to a community college for a very short period of time. It's very interesting to watch this happen. And it feels as though there is not much of a recovery from this point. I think we have to completely upend universities, what they're being taught, how they're being taught, because this has been something that's been in place for quite some time. When we're looking back at this ideology that is sort of now coming to fruition in these protests, in the woke ideology, in the trans stuff, in the Black Lives Matter movements, the seeds of this were being planted back in the 60s and 70s, and now we're sort of reaping what we've sown here. It's going to take a long time to get back. Honestly, a whole nother generation, I think, to rework our universities and get back to some semblance of reason.
Yeah, I saw a dad who attended his son's graduation at Cal Berkeley. He said, I sent my kid here to learn engineering, not idiocy. And, because they had so many protests in Memorial Stadium there during the graduation, it was really unfortunate. You mentioned you come at this from a different perspective because you attend a community college for a short period of time. I find this a fascinating viewpoint to dig into with you, because that means that you have had tremendous success in your life without the college degree. Am I right?
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to achieve things without the college degree. Yes.
You can say fortunate, and yeah, sure, there are blessings along the way. There's luck that comes into everyone's path, but you've worked really hard and you've been courageous enough to ask questions. And because you sat on the other side of the political spectrum for the first part of your life, So remind people, if they didn't see our first conversation, what were some of the first questions you asked that made you, that came to your mind, that made you think, I might be on the opposite side of this?
Yeah, I think one of the first questions that I really got consumed with was the idea of tolerance and how we define that word. Because in working for the left, which I did for quite some time in my youth, although I'm still young, there was this idea that we are the tolerant left. And time after time, I was confronted with a different idea that, in fact, the left was not so tolerant. So one of the main questions that I had was really about white people, because oftentimes in our effort to be anti-racist, we were blatantly racist towards white people. And I just kept being confronted with that point and that idea. And it was something that I couldn't shake. I'm biracial, so I grew up with a half-white family, and I was working every day seeing this anti-white racism and then going home to my family. So that was question number one that gradually brought me towards the idea that maybe leftist ideology is not what it claims to be. And more so than that, it's not healthy for society.
Amala, this is really interesting because I would define you as many things. Young, yes. A personality, a podcaster, a presenter, all of these things. But it seems to me like you're a truth seeker. Like you're sort of like constantly looking for the right answers to questions. How do you define what it is that you pursue every day?
Ooh, that's a big question. How do I define what I pursue every day? I like to operate with first principles, and I think that's something that a lot of young people should explore, and I was never tasked with exploring. So what are your principal values? I do believe in equality. I believe in free speech. I believe that people should be able to lead their lives, for the most part, within reason in the way that they see fit, and we should probably try our best not to infringe on other people's rights or their lives. Now, how does that play out in a world that is applying those principles reasonably? And that's how I go through the world when I'm reading the news from all these different sources who are spinning stories in different ways. If you have those first principles attached to yourself, you can use your values as a guide. And that's what I do with the work that I do. I also think it's really important to be able to say 6 words. One, I don't know. And that's one set. And the second set is I was wrong. I feel a lot of people are no longer comfortable saying these things, or they're not encouraged to say these things. You sort of give your view and you're stuck to that for the rest of your life. And I think the more we can encourage that sort of humility in conversation, the better our conversations are going to go and the more truth we'll find.
Yeah, that is a great point, to admit, I don't know. It's good practice when you do it with your kids. That's a good way to start, parents. Just to remind yourself, you don't always know. Well, you bring up something that leads me into this next question. Amala and I are both very big on free speech, and so is wealth protection research, because at the very heart of our democracy, free speech is the thing we hold sacred. It's the cornerstone that supports every freedom we cherish. But we're living in a digital age, and discussions about our wealth, our rights, our future, those are being silenced or overshadowed in the mainstream narratives. And that leaves so many people feeling frustrated and voiceless in these conversations that are absolutely crucial to our financial independence and security. And this is where wealth protection research steps in, armed with a mission that's never been more critical. Wealth protection research isn't a financial advisory firm. They're defenders of free speech. They're committed to giving a voice to the silenced. Wealth protection research tirelessly seeks out financial experts. These are the voices that challenge prevailing narratives, especially as we navigate the uncertainties of the 2024 election. Wealth Protection Research has created a 2024 Election Wealth Protection Report. This free report highlights the 3 best ideas for protecting and growing your money as we head into the 2024 election. It contains ideas the mainstream media really won't touch, and you can get it completely free by texting the word IDEAS, IDEAS, to 76626. Get your free copy. If you believe in the sanctity of free speech and the importance of financial freedom, do this now. Text IDEAS to 76626 to get your free copy of this 2024 election protection report. It is time to widen the scope of what we're told, to hear the ideas the establishment doesn't think you can handle, but you know you can, and take control of our financial destinies. Text IDEAS to 76626 to claim your free copy now. Because you don't want to infringe on people's rights, but what does that mean for everybody else? And one of the areas we're seeing this is in the way that Title IX has now been rewritten, and in the way that transgender, particularly transgender women, trans women, are impacting biological women in their pursuits, particularly in sports. We saw in Oregon last week, a trans girl just dominate a track meet. Now, this is someone who was born, and that phrase assigned male at birth. No, you're born with a penis. You're a male. You know, you have XX or you have XY chromosomes. That's what defines you. It's not a doctor assigning sex to you. That's biological. It's science. Right. So, but if you want to identify as trans, I have no problem with that. But I do have a problem with the unfairness, the inequality of boys, biological boys competing with girls, and then on into the collegiate level as well, and frankly, any other level. So how does that, how do you apply first principles to that conundrum?
Oof, it's just unbelievable to watch it happen. And the way I apply it is we look at how Title IX was meant to be applied at its conception. And this was meant to be protection for women, not only in sports, but against sexual misconduct in their locker rooms, in their private spaces. And if we can see now with this new rewrite of Title IX that is completely being flipped up on, its other side, we have a problem here. If there were protections created for women and for a reason, how is it now that we can flip these over for the sake of biological men being able to enter women's spaces? The issue is now that we have allowed people to sort of bend reality to their own whim, even though it's not logically consistent with reality. And we've allowed a marginalized group, trans people in this case, to overtake what was a once marginalized group, and that is women.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's strange to watch. I think there's enough pushback. I wish there were more. And I wish more high profile women and men, athletes, dads, whatever, would speak out more vociferously on this. I wish that young girls would have the courage to, when a trans girl lines up in the blocks for a track meet, get out of the blocks. Let that trans runner run alone. You're contributing to the future of saving your sport. And that to me is so much better than coming in second to a boy. I'd like to see more of that. And J.K. Rowling, the author, the extremely successful author of all the Harry Potter books, and she's fabulously wealthy now, extremely famous, all the rest. And she has been outspoken on this issue. And she is really, you could call her a leftist on many other topics, but on this one, and Amala, she takes so much incoming, even from, actors in her films. And yet it seems to me the more incoming she takes, the stronger she becomes. What do you make of that whole public war that she is waging?
Well, first of all, I love J.K. Rowling. I will use any opportunity to talk about this woman when it comes to this issue. She is in a very special place as somebody who has built a platform large enough to sustain itself no matter what she says or does. And once you reach that power, I think it's a wonderful thing to use it to speak on an issue that a lot of other people can't. When you speak about those students holding off and saying, allow that trans athlete to run on their own. I think there are going to be a few girls who are brave enough to do that, but a lot of them need a little bit of a push or a little bit of an example set. And J.K. Rowling has been that example for them. She's also identified that this issue goes far beyond female sports. She's talking about crime statistics that are now being logged as women committing crimes. She's talking about men who are being placed in women's facilities. Yes. She's talking about female victims of transgender identifying men. We'll get into, maybe hopefully unpack that these are predators just taking over a loophole that our society has created for them to be predators. But J.K. Rowling is in such an interesting place, having built such an amazing platform that will continue beyond anything she says or does now. And I'm amazed. I'm amazed by her.
She kind of joins Elon Musk in that category of, having the ability to do that. So proud to talk about XXXY Athletics. If you haven't checked them out, you need to. It's the only athletic brand standing up for the protection of women's sports. But men wear it too, and this stuff is super high quality. And this issue of women's sports, it's more urgent than ever. I mean, we saw Title IX get gutted. So the protection of women as a sex-based class, that's going away. There's no better person to lead this effort than Jennifer Say. She was a world-class gymnast who exposed the abuse of gymnasts. She got hurt by that, but she ended up being right. She was the president of Levi's, who, while she was president of Levi's, said, stop shutting down schools during COVID. She paid the price, but she was right and redeemed in the end. And now she's got this amazing brand of clothing, XXXY Athletics. It's the culmination of everything she's ever done. And I'm telling you, this stuff is so high quality. I knew it was going to be good, but then I got some. It's really tremendous high quality clothing. If you care about girls and women's sports, check out XXXY Athletics. You will love the quality and style, and you'll be choosing a brand that aligns with your values. Here's how you find them. XX-XYathletics.com. You got to put that dash in there. XX-XYathletics.com. Use the code Michele75 for free shipping on orders of $75 or more. That's good through the end of June. XX-XYathletics.com. Use Michele75. Finally, I can't let you go without talking a little presidential politics. As you and I sit here today, Donald Trump remains locked in the ice box that he calls it, that freezing cold courtroom. And now you're seeing more and more surrogates show up in New York outside, step in front of the microphones and speak on his behalf. And before I sat down to record with you, I saw Vivek Ramaswamy speaking. He is an excellent orator. He is phenomenal at making his points. He is someone that when you listen to him, you feel confident that he knows what he's saying. So it seems to me that a lot of these surrogates, Amala, might be auditioning or being put in this position to audition for that vice presidential slot. We saw Doug Burgum, the governor of North Dakota, out in New Jersey with Donald Trump. We see Byron Donalds around. We've seen Elise Stefanik around. What do you think? What do you think is the right combination for Trump if he thinks that a vice president can help him with some of these undecided voters?
Yeah, interesting question. I watched Vivek on the campaign trail when he was running for president. And I know as he left the race, he said, I would never want to be vice president. It's not the position for me. But it seems like he might be stepping up to the plate a little bit. I was a fan of him when he was running for president. I would be a fan of him for the vice president spot. As you stated, he is a sharp shooter when it comes to speaking on these issues. I think he manages to hit middle ground more often than not when he's talking to people who disagree with him. And he's very comfortable in engaging with people who are on the left, even those who have very vitriolic views towards him. I loved his stance on, shredding up the FBI and the CIA a little bit, his stance on election fraud and how he managed to answer those questions during his run. So he's a great candidate, I think, for vice president. Now, if Trump really wanted to play the game as Biden did with Kamala Harris, maybe a Tulsi Gabbard. She's a sharpshooter as well. I'm whether we like it or not, I think a lot of people on the left are super upset with Joe Biden and are still going to vote for him just for the sake of not wanting to go for the larger evil of Donald Trump. And maybe a feminine touch would soften him a little bit for them.
Yeah, you wonder if he has come out and said publicly, hey, Nikki Haley's not we're not considering her. And yet I think there are a lot of voters who would love to see him change his mind on that. I don't know that that's going to happen. I mentioned Tulsi Gabbard in a post on X, Veep, and I got resoundingly no.
Really?
And I was really surprised by that. Now, maybe that was the vocal minority. I don't know. But I was surprised by that because she did change. She left the Democrat Party for a reason. She has foreign policy chops. She's served in the military. She's served in the Senate. I think she's a really fascinating figure. So that's an interesting one, but we'll see. The other thing about Vivek, like when he speaks publicly, and we saw a couple ways, he speaks very strongly, but we also saw him confront a voter at an event, not in when I say confront, I mean, hey, let's engage here. Talk to me. And it was really interesting to watch how intently he listened to this person and how they had this back and forth. It was really, really interesting. He's capable of that too. But I can see him in China sitting across from Xi Jinping and being very confident that he's going to say and do the right things. And he's younger. I think that the bench needs to be a little bit younger.
Oh, I completely agree with you. Gerontocracy is constantly, that word is swirling around my mind as we look at the people who are representing us. I'm saying, just a decade younger, please. I mean, if we can even get that. Yeah. Vivek would be amazing if we could get something like that done, because that's a few decades shaved off. But yeah, I feel you on that 100%. And he does bring a confidence with him, a suaveness, if you will. I love how we're just fanning Vivek right now, but he could really bring that 100%. He could bring that to the table.
He really could. This is going to be a really interesting choice. And while many people say it doesn't make or break a presidential campaign, it can certainly communicate to voters what this president is thinking and that he is willing to say, this person compliments me well, or this person can back me up. So I think this year is different because of the age of these two presidential candidates. So I'd take anyone over Kamala, frankly. So, yeah.
I'm right there with you.
Oh, did you love
anything over the cackle?
And the F-bomb she dropped the other day. Did you see her with Drew Barrymore, who said we need a Mamala?
Oh, yes, I did. And now, you know what? Since my name is Amala, now I'm being called Mamala, and Drew Barrymore has really created a very large problem for me on that.
You know what? We take one letter away from Kamala. We got Amala, and that's enough for me. You are the antithesis of Kamala Harris. So I think the world of you, Amala, and I won't call you Mamala, because if you translate that, then we get into another thing altogether. So we won't.
Oh no,
we won't talk about that.
I greatly appreciate it.
Hey, keep doing what you're doing. We are thrilled to have you on the show anytime that you're available, and just fans. So keep doing what you're doing. She is Amala Epinobi. Follow her all over the place. Just find her on X and go from there. Thank you, Amala.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's been great.
Yeah. And don't forget, always, always, always to be brave, use your courage, and do some good in the world in any little small way that you can. We'll see you next time.